The human brain is a marvel of creation, intricately designed to seek meaning and connection. During Ramadan, this quest for spiritual fulfillment is heightened. Fasting activates areas of the brain that are associated with empathy, self control, and reflection. Join us this Thursday at 6:15 p.m. for an enlightening lecture by Dr. Daniel McBride on the fascinating connection between the brain, religion, and Ramadan.
I'd always cut my tags out. And I don't like, I mess with my socks a lot. So I'm a little hyper tactile. So what I've done with my brain studying and stuff, um, I'm using this on and if I do it again at another time, you may notice it on my left side. Today, I want to be a little more left-sided in my presentation. So I've got a watch and I've got it. My kids were trying to take out another piece of it. And I said, no, I like the fact that it slides a little more because it makes me even more aware of it. And it gives me more stimulation, right? On my right side stimulates my left hemisphere. And the ring here, while I was thinking about it while we were talking earlier, and I mess with it a lot. When I wear the ring, I'm always fidgeting with it. I'll try not to today. But the idea is today's talk, to lead us into today's talk, we've talked a lot about hemisphericity. We've talked about lobe function. We haven't gone into the Brodmann areas yet. There are considered anywhere from 45 up to 52. Not all of them are in human beings. Some of them are in animals, and and depending on the scholars, they break up certain areas. Like my mentor teaches 1 through 13, and then not 14, 15, and 16, because that's part of 13, and then 17 through 45. And then some scholars also talk about area 52, part of your taste areas, what we call gustatory areas. So there's also the Brodmann areas. Right now, I do a lot of, like we talked about, I'm doing just hemispheric stimulation. So I'm really lighting up my right side, and it's really stimulating my left side. And that is on purpose, because today I am talking about as much information as we've shared about hemisphericity, Brodmann areas, lobes, cranial nerves. We're going to talk about different treatments today. So if you want to, I'm going to break it up into a treatment protocol based on sensations. We've got, so that I don't forget any, we're talking about smell, we're talking about vision, we're talking about, in order of how I wrote it down, we're talking about hearing, we're talking about touch, we're talking about taste, I just mentioned, and a big word called proprioception. This includes coordinated movement, some balance, and spatial awareness of where you are in space and what's going on around you. That whole idea of close your eyes and touch your nose. If you can see without the light reflection, my nose is closed. Touch your fingers, touch different fingers as you're told to. So that's spatial awareness. And then I know I've got a big gigantic book right here. I've got another notebook over here, and I can touch it without looking at it, or my periphery picks it up a little bit. But that's also, I'm including spatial awareness with the definition, part of the definition of proprioception, because that's where you are. That's your physical self-awareness. And the stronger your physical self-awareness, the stronger your awareness of others, because everything in your brain, almost everything, and I think I can say everything about brain function is built on physicality, or the word motricity, meaning movement, muscular usage, standing, sitting, babies crawling. If you have children, if you have young children, or some of our young adults, when you get married and you start having children, don't encourage your children to walk right away. Make sure they learn how to roll first. Make sure they learn how to army crawl, scooting with an army crawl and dragging the legs. They learn that first, and then they get up on their hands and knees and crawl. And they might even, that's very important. They don't want to go right to hands and feet. They want to go hands and knees, okay? And then after they've gone through crawling, because cross crawl, right? Right arm, left leg, left arm, right leg, coordinates the different hemispheres to work together. So the more crawling they do, the better it is for them. That's something that I recommend adults do. Actually, the real cool research projects that have showed the more you crawl, the better the inter-hemisphere dialogue. And then, yeah, the better your brain, the better your right and left halves function with each other. And then crossing the body with movements. For some people, that's hard, hugely important. But what we're doing today is, like I said, I'm stimulating with touch, right? That's what I'm doing a lot of. But those are the areas I'm going to give you treatments or how to stimulate what you can do. Why? We'll start with smell. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to reference the sisters last week when she aced that, what we call the mini mental exam. The patient is given 3 different names, 3 different pieces of information, 3 different words, and she aced the hardest part, the 60-minute part. What we typically do is during an exam, if we're worried, if I'm doing a quick mental assessment, I'll give you 3 different words, probably totally unrelated to each other, so that that doesn't stimulate memory. I want you to just remember the words, and I'll ask the patient to give me the feedback on these 3 words at 10, 30, and 60 seconds. And then if they're doing real well, on a follow-up visit, I might give them 3 different words, and then I'll ask them at 10, 30, and 60 seconds to give me the words backwards in a reverse order. That's a gigantic challenge. So, sister, if you really want to impress your testing physician the other day, next time they ask you, give them the 3 words backwards and really let them know that brain is functioning 100%. There's also a real cool test in the same idea, and I'll cover these 3 tests real quick. It's called digit span. This is a really neat test. What you're going to do, and I'll read it to you. The patient repeats the numbers given back to the doctor. You can do it straightforward, or you can do it in reverse. Typically, what we see is most patients can repeat 6 numbers in order. So I could give you 6 random numbers between 0 and 9, or we could do 0 and 10, 0 and 11. I like to sit between 0 and 9. And I'll give you these 6 numbers, and it may even repeat. And then I'll tell you the number, you'll tell me it back. Then I'll give you a number and a number, you'll tell me those and give them to me backwards. Then I'll give you a number, then you'll give them to me backwards. Number, give it to me backwards. And that is going, typically, if we just do 6, if we do straight across, most people can do 6. A problem is if you do less than 6. If you do it backwards, most people, normal is at least 4 backwards. So I'll give you the 4 numbers. A good number is, actually, it can be, most people can do 6. Ideal is 9. And I think, and the same thing with going backwards, a good number is 6. I mean, ideal is 6 or more. Less than 4 becomes problematic. And then the last test is called FAS test. And what you're going to do, typically, that someone is giving you a neurological assessment or a mental exam, it's called the FAST test, and typically we'll use the letters F, A, and S, or S. And I might say, okay, brother or sister, what I want you to do is, I'm going to start my watch. Now that I've got one on, I'm going to start my watch, and you're going to give me as many words as you can to start with the letter F. The key is, make sure you get this, there's no plurals. You can't say him and his. You can't say he, let's see, plurals, sock and socks, book and books, light and lights. It's six, excuse me. You're going to give me the words, or you're going to give me approximately, you should give me 12 individual words back that cannot be plurals. And it can't be like fast, faster, fastest, fasting, even though that's totally different. It can't be fasting. If you use fast or any of those, that's the only fast that you can use. You can do FAS, and then you're going to 12 is normal. 8 or less is a problem. And you've got 1 minute to give me 12 words starting with the F or the A or the S or whatever letters you use. So what you're going to do is you get 1 minute, and you can do that with family members. Kids usually do a little bit less because they usually don't have the same vocabulary, same word amount that we do. So you've got the mini mental exam this sister talked about, the 3 individual words, and you can ask for those to be repeated at 10, 30, and 60 minutes. You have the digit span exam, and what you're going to do is you can do it either forwards only, or forwards and backwards, or backwards only. And what you're going to do is take numbers and repeat after the doctor. And I'm going to say 1 and 5 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 6 and did it. And then you got to give them back to me in that order. And then the hardest one is to take numbers and give them back to me in reverse order. So if I was going to do it easily, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I expect you to give them back to me 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But imagine how hard it is if I'm mixing it up, right? So those are the 3 tests: the mini mental exam, the digit span, and the FAST test. Real cool for overall, particularly frontal and the memory centers, hugely important. And I especially like the FAST test because that stimulates memory centers. Excuse me, that stimulates memory centers. It also stimulates a lot of this left hemisphere stuff because we're talking about word searching, word finding. We don't so much need comprehension and definition, though. Okay. So what you're doing is you're stimulating word finding and memory without having to understand the definition itself. You're definitely going into memory, though, and word usage. And of course, like I said, while you're speaking and trying to stimulate that whole stuff, one of the hardest areas to get correct is speech because it's such fine and a lot of muscles, fine motor control, diaphragm, throat muscles, neck muscles, the mouth, the tongue, everything. And then also you're bringing in the word finding and getting it through correctly, motor function, basal ganglia. There's a lot I love the FAST test. There's a lot going on with the FAST test. Now, let's jump into smell because a lot of you should have that list already. I'm going to remind you of the areas that it stimulates. The smell stimulates, remember, the ipsilateral or same side hemisphere. So although it's reversed in the picture, this is my left side. So what I would do is if I want to stimulate just the left hemisphere, I can block my right nostril, and then I'm going to do I keep a scent right here. So what I can do is the test would be something, and if you're doing a test, you want to start out at about more than 10 inches, say 12 inches, and then you should be, I can smell that, and this is how far away it is. It's a bent arm length. I'm a little over 6 feet tall, so this is going to be what? Anywhere from 2 to 3 feet. Well, no. We're going to be about 2 feet, I guess, because you got to go across my torso and then to the other arm. So I'm about, I don't know, I'm over 1.5 feet probably. And I can smell, this is a Japanese plant or a Japanese oil called, Hinoki. I chose this because it's supposed to really stimulate brain function. It's called false cypress. And this can actually, this is a very important ingredient to a Japanese shaman, medicine, herbalist, a Japanese herbalist. They'll use this as one of the main ingredients in an ADHD scent package with a couple of other herbs, but this is their primary. So if the patient can't smell it here, then you start moving closer and ask them to tell you when they smell it. And like I said, some patients I actually test, I'm literally right here. And there it is. Okay. You want to be out here something more than about 10 to 8, somewhere in the range of 10 to 18 inches. The farther away, the better. Okay. And then, of course, the same thing on the other side. Beautiful scent, false cypress, Japanese cypress. And the idea with smell is it stimulates, like I said, the ipsilateral hemisphere. So if we've talked and you've determined you're a little bit weak on the right, brothers, put a scent, a little bit of a smell, maybe over here, lower on your cheek and your beard. Remember, some oils, some people are allergic to certain plants. If it's a real oil, test it on yourself first before you put it up here. But on us, like I said, you can hide it in the hair. Sisters, put it on the hijab on that side, put it on a collar. You can put it on the collar of your clothing. Again, make sure it doesn't stain. Some of these oils will actually give off a color and leave a stain. So I'm a big fan. I'll put it on my beard on one side or the other, depending on what I'm trying to do. Or in my case, I really don't have a deficiency in smell. I'll put a little bit right here so that I can kind of smell it all day, because it actually stimulates a lot in there. It also stimulates the olfactory centers, which are considered in the mid-temporal area. They're back in here, dead center going straight back up behind the nose. It has a really strong, if you remember just the other day, we talked about the OFC, the orbital frontal cortex. Remember what we talked about in terms of whether your morality is just theory or you apply it, okay? This sense of smell is a strong stimulation to the OFC, the orbital frontal cortex. So if you want to be more morally sound and have strengthen your morals, that would be the area to stimulate. You might put it right here and you're really going through that the orbital frontal cortex. Then if you want to actually initiate more moral actions, maybe you do it more often on the left than the right. If you tend to be a real strong left brain, and you might tell yourself, oh my gosh, I don't have enough empathy, you may realize it. And I don't feel the way other people do. You may want to put it on your right side to stimulate more of the right hemisphere. Does that make sense? Not only that, but you're also going to do smell is hugely, hugely important to the hippocampus, your memory janitor. The hippocampus takes in all those memories and stores them all over the place. And then when you need one, you stimulate the hippocampus and it pulls it out through different associations. Memories are not just stored by just time or just a beach memory or just a smell memory. It's really cool. You could have a whole bunch of memories from smelling your mother's cookies. And it may remind you of a time you went to the beach. And again, you say, oh, how do those go together? Well, your mother took you to the beach. Your father took you to the beach. Your mother made the cookies. Then you all went to the beach. Here I am in Florida. Not really a beach person, but I do live in Florida. The idea is that stimulating the hippocampus, smell is a great stimulation. And it's really important to test smell. I use it a lot with my adult patients, and especially coming off of COVID, because smell is actually smell in different research projects. Smell gives you either a 10 to 20 year window. If you lose your sense of smell, it's a lock. 99% of the time, it's a lock that you are going to be diagnosed with a mental dysfunction, a dementia, or maybe even Alzheimer's within the next 10 to, and on the extreme study, 20 years down the road. But at least it gives you a 10-year window. So imagine if you lost your sense of smell tomorrow and you realized it. So now, if it was an indicator that 10 years from now, you're going to get a dementia diagnosis, imagine you start strengthening up your hippocampus, you start strengthening up, you start trying to train in your sense of smell. In my office, I use a lot of what we call laser therapy as compared to just red light and infrared light therapy. I use a class 3 cold laser. That's what we use. There are class 4s that work. I just don't like applying those to the brain because they do cause heat. Class 3 and below doesn't. But those red lights you can get, and I mentioned them before, you can buy them, the red light. And some of them are good, some of them are bad. A company I recommend that I buy from is called Platinum, Platinum, Platinum LED. And that's what it is. It's LED, but it's a very serious LED. And they come with red and infrared settings. If you look at that website, I've bought only the Bio series because I don't adjust for the Bio Max. I don't change the percentage of red and infrared. I turn them both on and I just use it. But that's hugely important. So the sense of smell is really, really a great indicator of brain function. And finally, a side note, the cerebellum, your balance centers for balanced emotion, balanced thoughts, and balanced physical balance. Your cerebellum actually controls your ability to sniff. So if you can't even do this, you may have a cerebellar problem, and we'd work on that too. Okay, now, to summarize, right brain, that's associated with bad smells, avoidance behaviors, disgust. That always engages, that's always on because you want to avoid the disgusting smells, right, to stay safe. To stimulate the right brain, you are actually going to use, and any smell will actually work, but the right brain, like I said, is more attuned to bad smells. So I would emphasize coffee, burnt wood, black pepper, eucalyptus, fish oil, lime, mustard, onion, lemon, and pepper. And as we talked about before, kids usually don't like lemon and pepper. Some of them do, but most adults do. So it may fall under a left brain smell. Some of you may like the smell of coffee or any of these, but these tend to be more stimulating to the right brain than the left. The left brain is associated with pleasant smells, approach behavior. That would be apple, banana, cherry, chocolate, grape, orange, pineapple, rose, strawberry, lavender, and an adult's lemon and pepper, or maybe not. And any one of these you may not like, but these tend to be associated with left brain activity. And then, of course, in my office, with my brain patients in particular, when I'm dealing with a brain patient, stroke patients, memory center issues, we can use a lot of smell, right? Ipsilateral, and then I'll light up that side of the brain and I'll go after it, particularly, like I said, the temporal lobe and the orbital frontal cortex. And if there's a sniff issue, of course, we start with the cerebellum. And that's red light therapy, or in our office, it's actually considered class 3 cold laser. So that's how you can use the sense of smell. How simple is that to do that at the house? You could literally use coffee every day. Smell it, sniff it. Coffee acts as a stimulant, whether you sniff it or drink it. It's really cool. Some research supports just smelling coffee stimulates the brain function a little bit more above normal. So smells are really important. And remember, that's the one sense that does not cross over. It stays on the same side. So if you are a left dominant, you want to stimulate more right hemisphere. If you are a right dominant, you want to stimulate more left hemisphere, okay? So you block the opposite nostril. Everything else I talk about is more contralateral stimulation, or the opposite side, if I don't mention it, okay? The next thing I'd like to talk about is vision. Vision is hugely important for those of us that can see. It stimulates both hemispheres at the same time. But then I'll talk about the crossover here in a moment. So what you're going to do, vision also crosses over to the contralateral side. It's really cool. I use a lot of vision at the end of the training. I like to, most of the cortical stuff, I've already worked through primitive reflexes. I've worked through any brainstem issues. I check all the cranial nerves. I may have had to do some cerebellar and vestibular work already. We've included core work for the cerebellum and things like that. And then when we get into this cortex work, which some of this stuff, and then I teach patients to do a lot of this at home. I'm actually giving you protocols that I recommend at home. Make sure, as a doctor, there are no contraindications. Make sure you talk to your regular physicians first, because I don't know you, and there may be some contraindications that I'm not aware of. But these are things that I use in the office, and I recommend to my patients. Vision, both hemispheres. Vision also crosses over. It's really cool too. When you look down, and it's really interesting because we're told to lower our gaze, emphasizing modesty. When I look down, I'm stimulating up the parietal lobes. Okay. So when we talk about parietal lobes, that is going to be a lot of spatial awareness, self-awareness, your interoception or interoception, your self-awareness, the proprioception I already mentioned. That's all of your parietal lobes. It could be organic stimulation, feeling your organs, internal pains. You feel pressures, you feel hunger, you feel thirst. There's so many, all of your self-awareness runs through the parietal lobe. And then, like I said, even touch. And the parietal lobes are hugely important to proprioception. They're important to balance. You got to know where you are. Could be a parietal lobe and not so much a cerebellar lobe problem for balance. If you don't feel your feet, of course, you're not going to have strong balance, are you? So looking down with vision stimulates the parietal lobes more. Looking up, actually, say if you were reading something, you'd be looking, if I hold my head up straight, but I lower my gaze, lower my eyes, I'm going to be stimulating more parietal lobe. I may hold my head straight and I'll be reading up, or if I'm looking up, that's going to stimulate more of the temporal lobe. So imagine again, if I'm reading and I hold it up here, or I actually have my computer screen in my office. I actually have it set up higher. So I encourage a little bit of extension in the neck, and I'm looking up into my screen. Okay. And I know that that's going to stimulates more temporal lobes, which are going to stimulate more of my vision centers. So it makes sense while I'm working on my computer and typing up patient notes. I want to stimulate my verbal centers, don't I? And I can use my vision to do that. And what is also in the mid-temporal area? Your hippocampus. So I'm hoping it stimulates more memory function, storage, and recall, if that makes sense. So if you're having trouble remembering things, try raising up your computer screen a little bit, because look at all the things we do. I got to tell you, when I talk to patients, they're typing down, looking down, like I'm talking into my screen, I'm looking down. When I'm doing my notes at the office, why not look up a little bit to help work on my curve? Because one of the things I almost always see in adults is a loss of the cervical curve. There's a real cool term with computers and cell phones now. They call it text neck, where you're texting and looking down all the time, or you're typing, and it used to be called tech neck, TECH, that loss of cervical curve, because almost everything we do in life is down here. When I'm working on a patient, they're on the table, I'm looking down. When I'm talking, I like to stand up a lot, and the patient might be sitting, so I'm looking down. So there's a lot of looking down. When I type, I have to look down because I'm a terrible typist. But when I look at my screen, I'm looking up. Okay, so vision is hugely important. Like I said, looking up stimulates the temporal lobe because they're lower. Looking down stimulates the parietal lobes because they're higher. Then when I look to my right, at this point, I'm looking out of my peripheral vision. The nasal vision, it's really cool what you have. So that I don't confuse anyone, I'm going to say it this way. When you look with vision, the nasal actually crosses over to temporal, and the temporal crosses over to nasal. Does that make sense? So this way, this side shares information with this side. So my right eye is talking to both my right and left brain. Then the same thing here, so that you can see, keep my hands in the camera. The left brain is talking to both, my left eye and my left vision is talking to both my left hemisphere and my right hemisphere. So that way, both hemispheres are getting all of this global vision, okay? Global information, I meant to say. Global vision, global information. Hugely important, okay? So that's stimulating both sides of the hemisphere at both sides of the brain, both hemispheres at the same time. So that's a huge, huge, really cool activity. And then what you can do is we actually cover eyes and we stimulate that way, and it's just really cool. There's a lot of little details, but what I'm saying is, with that in mind, like I said, you can use vision. And what did we already talk about? We already talked about color, didn't we? So again, you can use colors and reading, right? Reading stimulates a lot because, like I said, you've got your verbal centers over here, you've got your memory centers, you've got your motor skills. You've got a lot of stuff going on. Then if you remember the words and all that, and comprehension with the words and what the author's trying to tell you and the meaning of the story, a lot of stimulation with vision and reading. I love, love, love reading as an exercise and reading out loud. Now you're using even more motor control. And you're also, with this, we talk about colors. Red, yellow, and orange for what hemisphere? Right or left? Everyone say left. And then blue colors in your vision, right? Blue colors are going to do the opposite. Blue, indigo, and green. I'm sorry. Blue, green, and indigo stimulate the right brain. So you can actually use your vision hemispherically also. So remember the test we talked about for vision. Again, you can use colors, and you can even use colored pieces of paper. Remember with the Stroop, the Stroop test, we'll talk about that. With the saccades and the pursuits, saccades and pursuits, you can even use colors, trying to stimulate. If I want to stimulate the left hemisphere, then I would use red, yellow, or orange color, right? And I might put it on a little piece of paper, and I hold the paper here, and I hold another paper here. Now I put the paper over here, right? So that, here we are. So I'm looking dead center at it, and I've got the other paper here. Now my eyes saccade over. I'll show you with head movement. The eyes by themselves jump over, and they see another red, orange, or yellow, and you can mix the colors. Use red and orange, or yellow and orange, yellow and red, whatever you want to do. So now you do the saccade. That's left frontal lobe. Boop, there it goes. Now we use the pursuit. That's left parietal lobe, pulling it back. Then you keep your eyes right here, and you move the color card back. Then you saccade over, pursuit back. Does that make sense? And you can use colors for that. With that in mind, then you do the other side for the other hemisphere. And then if I'm doing smell and vision together, now what am I doing? I'm using pleasant smells to stimulate the left hemisphere. And then I'm using right saccades and right to left pursuits. All of that, smell, vision, saccades, pursuits. If you remember anti-saccades, you need a partner for this. The finger wiggles and you look to the opposite finger, right? That's an anti-saccade. That would be over here. So you've got these, these different vision activities, and then you can enhance that with smells. And like I said, then you use coffee, burnt wood, pepper, lemon, eucalyptus. What else was over there for smells? Black pepper, eucalyptus, fish oil, lime, mustard, onions, all of those smells over here. And the pleasant smells over here: chocolate, cherries, bananas, apples, strawberries, oranges, blah, 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 blah. Pepper and lemon for an adult. I'll put those over here for pleasant smells. Now you're using both vision and smell to stimulate the brain hemispherically. And of course, eventually I'll figure out how to talk about broadening areas because that's an individual part. It's just as well, I guess, stroke patients and brain trauma themselves, that would be important to you to talk about different areas. But we actually can break those down in different areas and exactly what that one little piece of the brain does. But these are really important. And I combine a lot of vision and smell because it's real easy, real safe, and really no contraindications for vision and smell. When we use, if you did invest in some red light at home, remember mashallah, one of the things we have to be concerned about with red light, and particularly like my more expensive red light, it's actually, like I said, considered a cold laser. You are using that to stimulate ATP or stimulate cellular function. So if there's this much light, you're stimulating all the cells of the brain right underneath that light, right? And then when light hits things, it deflects a little bit and diverges as compared to converging. So it hits the skin, it hits the skull, it might hit a little bit of hair that might be there, but then it hits the brain tissue and spreads out the diffusion. So or if you're doing like the immune system, we won't talk about it, but I do that over the abdominal aorta. Um, you don't want to have any cancer in that area. And over the abdominal area, you don't want to be pregnant because you don't want to stimulate those cells to grow better and faster and stronger. Okay. You wouldn't want a pregnant, a fetal development to get out of sequence, right? It speeds up for a little bit, and then part of it is fast, and it's we don't use it on pregnant women in that area, and we don't use it in cancer patients. Although some doctors actually have a cancer protocol. If you were going to use red light to prevent getting it, remember the tumor necrosis factor that helps fight off cancer is stimulated more on the left side from the left side of the brain. So if you have a family history, you could use red light there. But I check with your regular MD first. If you have any questions about these two areas, we'll just cover smell and vision today. I started with these because they're really easy to apply. Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead. Let me go back a little bit. Reading out loud. Reading and reading out loud are great visual activities, visual exercise. Reading out loud then ties in your motor centers even stronger than just the eye movement, okay? It also affects the frontal lobe because you've got the frontal eye field. It helps focus. You've got saccades. We talked about anti-saccades. You've got pursuits. The dual. You've got the Stroop chart. You also, and then with the Stroop chart, really cool. You can Google that up. Search up Stroop chart, STROOP. What the one I use in the office is one with the name of a color, and ours are, the one I made is red, blue, orange, and green. Those are the 4 colors I use. Almost everybody knows those words and those colors. The first row of the Stroop chart actually has a red box, red word, a blue box, a blue word, an orange box, an orange, the word orange, and then the green box and the word green, okay? Then what you do is you read across and you read, it's usually 4 rows. You read the word red, blue, orange, green, then this might be blue, green, orange, red, and this will be changed, and it's random after that. Read the words as fast as you can. Do it, have the patient or yourself, do it as fast as you can. That is, again, your baseline time, right? So that's going to be your baseline time. And with 4 rows, and we even use at my house, we tend to be a little competitive, myself and my kids. So we were competing against each other, a couple of these tests. We compete each other to see who can get the lowest time. So we blow through it as fast as we can, we read the words. Now what you're going to do, after you get comfortable with it, you read it correctly a couple times. Now what you do is you time yourself and you don't read the words anymore. You read only the color. A nightmare. I am not lying. And you can make your own. You don't even have to download something. You can literally take a sheet of paper, make it big enough. And I use a standard Stroop chart style. 4 rows, 4 colors, and I use red, blue, orange, and green. Those are the 4 colors I use. And like I said, the first row, the word matches the color. After that, they don't. Then what you try to do after you get used to reading the word, read it as fast as you can with no errors. Once you can do that, that's your base time. Now you read just the colors as fast as you can. And that's really cool. Number one, it's vision. It's frontal lobe, because I gave you a direction. Now, like an anti-saccade, you're going against the regular direction. And you're also inhibiting your automatic reflex. It is automatic for, if it's written in your language, it's automatic for you to go to the word first. It's a lot. If your first language or your main language is English, do it in English. Mine's English. If your main language, your first language, your comfort language is Arabic, do it in Arabic. Um, it's an awesome test. The Stroop chart is phenomenal. And it actually, the better you get at it, the more you do it, just a couple minutes every day, the more you do it, the better all of your brain function and the improvement in dementia scores or testing. So this is a great preventative. Like I said, for people that have smell issues, well, one of the things I might do is give them a Stroop chart for homework, and then I test them when they come in. I'm all over people. I'm kind of like the way I am when I talk here. I'm really into, inshallah, trying to be a benefit. And it's very important. When I give you homework, I nag you about it at the beginning. But then when I find out I care more than you do, I ramp it back. But it's important. The Stroop chart is a great toy and test. And then again, do it out loud. Give the colors out loud. Give the words out loud. And then when you get comfortable with it, what you can do is literally cut them up, or make one, make two, cut up one of them and shuffle it up like a deck. You've got 16 pieces of paper, and you're going to read the color as fast as you can as you flip it over. Or we flipped it over here at the house and we challenged the kids. And I might even, if they started to beat me, I'd change the position. I'd make them move their eyes a little bit too. Of course, I tell myself I'm not being mean. I'm trying to train their brain better, but I was definitely being competitive with my kids. We have a good time with it because actually all of them were faster than I was. So I've got a little bit of ways to go. So what we're talking about is reading and reading out loud. We're talking about saccades for vision. We're talking about anti-saccades. Remember, look away from the wiggling finger. You're talking about pursuits. Pursuits pull, saccades push from that side. And then you've got the Stroop chart. If you want to, if you like using a cell phone, I'm not a big fan of it, but there's something called OPK. I'm trying to use my sign language. OPK. It's called the optokinetic reflex. They have apps, OPK apps. I don't use one on my phone, so I can't recommend if it's safe or not safe, what you're downloading. But the OPK app actually does pursuits with pictures, with numbers, with lines, with colors. And the way it's pulling is the hemisphere that it's stimulating, because remember what we said, if it's pulling to the left, it's stimulating my left parietal lobe. And then when I get to the end, following that face or that animal face with kids, a lot of doctors use it for that. They will prefer pursuing animal faces, fruit shapes, that kind of thing. But they'll pursue it with the left parietal lobe, right? And then they have to jump back to the beginning again. So they're using their left frontal lobe. And then you hit it to go the other way. And you're doing your right parietal lobe pulling it across, and then your left frontal lobe to jump back. But the OPK reflex is really, really cool. It's what you use when a train goes by you and you're waiting at the edge of the tracks, watching it go by. You get caught on a car, then you jump back. You get caught on a train car and you jump back. That's your OPK reflex. Hugely important for vision. And that's one of your base reflexes, very involved with vestibular function, very involved with balance and cerebellum. Very important to cerebellum, because remember when we talked about jumping and smooth eye movement, the cerebellum is very important to that. So if there's a visual problem, an OPK tape or an OPK app could be important. I like the OPK, I just didn't download it on my phone. So that's what I'd like to share with you today. And then next week, what we'll do is we'll cover hearing and touch, and we'll tie hearing and touch back to vision. And then we'll talk about taste and proprioception also. Any questions, sister?
Jazakallah khairan.
Assalamu alaikum, Imam.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I can tell you just got back from Saudi. You have more of an Arabic accent.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
By the way, as you know, I'm colorblind.
Kind of what?
Colorblind. I cannot see. You know, I have problem with the colors. Remember?
Yes. Yes.
So what you think about the colors? The problem with me.
That would be, let's think about how, suppose you did, okay, try this. Here's a pretend.
Yeah.
Let's pick numbers then.
Numbers, yeah.
Let's take numbers, and what you will do is, let me think about that. I know some people are colorblind and color issues.
Yeah.
It's usually just red and green though. So you could change the colors and use orange, yellow. Orange and yellow are kind of close though. You could use other colors other than red and green, or maybe you could try 4 different shapes with a number in them.
Then when you come for the Eid, let me know face to face is better. Yeah.
Inshallah, we'll plan that if Eid falls on Sunday. MashaAllah, that's the plan.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Barakallah fikum.